completely open border, zero tariffs on both sides of the border, almost completely integrated into the larger US economy. The Canada we all grew up in doesn't exist anymore as far as most of us are concerned. We have far more in common with people in Montana than we do in Ottawa and Montreal.
Oh boy, guess they're gonna have to start paying some serious attention to those Alberta Rednecks now, aren't they? This Alberta independence thing is not going anywhere. The more they try to suppress it, ignore it, or attack it, the more determined Albertans become. And who is they, you may wonder? Well, they them. The woke mafia, the elbows up crowd, aka the quasi-communist liberal left of Canada. Bless their heart, they're trying so hard to ignore and discredit Alberta's independence movement, but it just keeps gaining traction. So much so that the other day, at a national press conference, they asked Mark Carney about it, and he looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. What scares them about this movement in particular is that Albertans aren't just talking about it. They're acting. They're having meetings, rallies, and town halls. They're organizing and planning. This isn't a protest, but a strategic plan being led by ordinary people fed up with the status quo. The kind of people who make history. Watch.
I don't even consider myself to be Canadian anymore. An independent Alberta would look very much the way it looks now, only people would have a lot more freedom and would have a lot more financial wealth and well-being staying in their pockets. The Alberta independence movement is growing.
How many people would like Alberta to become an independent, sovereign Commonwealth nation?
I mean, most of us are, primarily interested right now in an independent Alberta. There's a lot of people interested in pursuing statehood. My mind is extremely open in that regard. But, like any relationship, let's get out of Canada, right? And then we can discuss whether we want to join a rebound country later.
What I expect the Americans will do is that they will indicate at some point here that they will recognize Alberta's right to self-determination, that the Americans, whether it's the State Department or the president or someone, will say, we know there's the situation going on in Canada and we respect the right of Albertans to choose their destiny and have self-determination. The American government's done this in other instances where there's a upheaval in some countries around the world. And then I think the next thing they might do is say, well, if the referendum is in favor of separation, international states can give recognition, even where the home country doesn't agree. Think Taiwan, right? So a number of countries, including Canada, have recognized Taiwan, even though, according to the Chinese constitution, Taiwan is part of China, right? So one of the options the Americans will have is to give international recognition to Alberta. Alberta will have that advantage going into the negotiation, that if everybody wants to play silly bugger and not engage in good faith negotiations, you've got Trump already signaling perhaps that he will give international recognition.
You're starting to hear it more and more. Albertans saying they don't even feel Canadian anymore. And can you blame them? This isn't the country they grew up in. The culture's slipping away, corruption's baked into the system, immigration's completely out of control, and Alberta's voice? Irrelevant to the federal government. It's like yelling into a void while they help themselves to your wallet. That's why so many Albertans are done. They want out. Independence. And of course, the usual crowd starts quacking, Canada won't allow it. Oh, really? Ever heard of the Clarity Act? It's federal law, folks. It literally lays out how a province can separate legally. And let's be honest, if Albertans vote to leave and Ottawa throws a tantrum and says no, do you think a Trump-led America is just going to sit and watch from the sidelines? Not a chance. The U.S. would likely recognize Alberta's independence before Carney can even say elbows up. And if Alberta decides to partner with the U.S., well, it's over. What can Canada really do at that point?
Oh Lord, won't you bring me independence? Ottawa is killing me. I must make
Canadian patriotism is at an all-time high in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to turn their country into the 51st state. But for these people in the oil-rich province of Alberta, the problem isn't the US, it's Canada.
This is the only political event I've ever been to in my entire life because I believe in it so passionately.
Abusive, an abusive girlfriend.
Relationship, yeah.
It's not that we want to leave Canada behind, but at the end of the day, how come it's okay to leave Alberta behind?
Canada is literally planning the destruction of our culture, the destruction of our economy.
This is Jeff Rath, a Calgary-based lawyer and one of the most vocal proponents of secession in Alberta.
Hop in, we'll go to the top of the hill. The Canada we all grew up in doesn't exist anymore as far as most of us are concerned. We have far more in common with people in Montana than we do in Ottawa and Montreal.
Rath co-founded the Alberta Prosperity Project. The organization's goal is to turn the province into a sovereign country with close ties to the United States.
Completely open border, zero tariffs on both sides of the border, almost completely integrated into the larger US economy.
The Angus Reid Institute, a Canadian public opinion research organization, found that just over a third of Albertans might support secession. But this minority view gained real political potential after the Alberta legislature lowered the number of required signatures for a province-wide referendum last month.
I think we can't ignore the fact that a third or more of Albertans are fed up. I think that's a notice to Ottawa that they've got to take this seriously. The question is, what can we do to address it?
Danielle Smith, the province's premier and a member of the Conservative Party, says she's against secession, but understands the reasons behind it.
I think my job is to try to get people feeling good about Alberta's place in Canada again.
Donald Trump's election has given us a lot of hope. If anybody is going to have the guts to recognize an independent Alberta, it would be the Trump administration.
Rath hopes to collect enough signatures for a vote on secession by spring 2026. And if it's unsuccessful this time,
we just roll up our sleeves and work harder. None of us are going home. We'd have another referendum as soon as we could.
One of the biggest lies peddled by Ottawa and their media cheerleaders is that the United States is the cause of Canada's problems. But ask your average Albertan. We know better. We know the real problem is in Washington. It's Ottawa. It's Central Canada calling the shots and controlling the whole country's future, while Alberta foots the bill. We're the cash cow. A tax colony, really. Sounds a lot like taxation without representation, doesn't it? Alberta sends billions to the East every year through equalization. And what do we get in return? Lectures, regulations, and insults. The truth is, Albertans have far more in common with folks from Montana, Wyoming, Texas, places where freedom, hard work, and self-reliance still mean something. Unlike the Toronto and Montreal elites who think oil is evil and the government should run your life. That's why more and more Albertans are quietly lowering that maple leaf and proudly flying the Alberta flag. Because we're ready to carve our own path. And this time, Ottawa doesn't get to decide it for us. Alright, thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Special thanks to those of you who have donated to this project. It is much appreciated and it helps me continue making videos. See you on the next one. Peace.